get some microphones. Murugi, Karibu, welcome. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a panel discussion and we're talking about addictions. And I'm going to have each of the panel members just introduce yourselves and tell us what you do. So, thank you. Just confirm that your microphone is on. Is your microphone on? Yes. All right, so let's start with my right, Sharon Slater. Please introduce yourself to this wonderful audience.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Slater, President of Family Watch International, and I also chair the United Nations Family Rights Caucus. But with regard to this topic, I will introduce myself as a documentary and filmmaker because we have a documentary called Porn Pandemic, which you can find at pornpandemic.org, and there's other resources regarding this.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Sharon Slater. To my left, Murugi.
My name is Murugi Firebrand, or Murugi Ndongo, and I run an organization called Free Society, where we are advocating for a porn-free society in Kenya. I also run, as you've been told, a lot of ministries. One is called Beyond Queer, where we help people who struggle with same-sex attraction overcome it. That is based on a personal experience, and the Lord has been good.
Thank you. Put our hands together for Murugi Ndongo. Finally, Susan.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Maua. I work at NACADA, and that is the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse. I am in charge of public education and capacity development. So that means that my work basically involves protecting people from themselves.
Wow, protecting people from themselves. And I am very pleased to host this panel because I personally run a pornography addiction recovery program for men called Powerhouse. And we run an equivalent one for women called Girl Power. And my wife, Waturi, teaches the women's program. In fact, my wife is right here. Waturi, could you just stand up and say hi? Oh, that's my lovely wife, Waturi. Isn't she beautiful? I like to say if beauty was measured in bricks, she would be the Great Wall of China. That's how I started my family. All right, so maybe let me start with Susan. Please just tell us, what's the situation on the ground? How does Kenya look like as far as addiction is concerned? And you may have a slant towards drugs and substances, and that's okay, but just tell us, give us a glimpse of what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, thank you. It's difficult to have that conversation in the sense that substance use is a developmental issue. So that means that it begins in childhood. And so, based on the researches that we have done, you will find that children as low as 6, 7 years have actually initiated substance use. And this happens in the family. If you get into secondary schools, and now we are talking about children in adolescence, this is actually the stage at which there is increased use. Initiation began when they were at the primary school level. Most of it also peaks in adolescence. Now, when they transit into college and universities, it even escalates. So, as NACADA, we've actually done studies at those levels. That includes even the workplace. Unfortunately, substance use is worse at the workplace. But all these things still turn back to the family. So we are talking about alcohol, the most abused substance, whether you're talking of a primary school child or you're talking about a university student. Then the next substance, interestingly, is going to be prescription drugs. If you are looking at primary and secondary school children. When you get to university, then now, other than alcohol, now we have cannabis, because that is the illegal substances, because when we talk of alcohol, tobacco, those are legal substances. When you get to the workplace, you're going to find all this. So, whatever happens in all these settings, it actually begins in the home. And part of the unfortunate things that we found out, particularly when we talk about the young ones, like the ones who came here to, tell us, actually pull our ears on some of the things that we do as family members, it actually turns out that whatever substance use actually begins in the home.
Wow.
It doesn't begin in the school. Most of the substance use also happens during the holidays, not during the school time. Yeah. So more and more, we are seeing the issue coming back to the family.
Wow, amazing. It's happening in the home as low as age 6. It's happening in the holidays. And it means that there's a blind spot for parents, because parents may not be aware of what's going on. Let me come to Sharon Slater. You called your documentary The Porn Pandemic. Why the porn pandemic?
Because we're finding pornography addiction doesn't discriminate against color, age, boundaries of countries, that porn addictions are happening all across the world. Doesn't discriminate based on age. It can happen at some of the youngest ages, and it is a serious problem that is destroying children. It's actually distorting the brain. They've even done studies that show that your brain starts to change, the neuroplasticity of the brain, and it destroys marriages and families, and it can be a root cause of the destruction of the family and violence against women and girls, especially because most of the porn depicts this kind of violence: hitting, scratching, spitting, hair pulling, kicking. They've done studies on the nature of how violent these programs are. And just one last thing about porn that's important to know is that once you see it, some brains get addicted to just even one view, and they have to see it, and they'll do anything to find it. And pornography addictions escalate from soft porn to harder porn to kinky porn to abusive porn, and it just keeps escalating until there's some kind of intervention.
Wow. I've got some statistics here that I would like to read to our audience. Pornography increases infidelity in marriages by up to 300%. 40% of porn addicts suffer inevitable divorce. And the porn industry or porn sites receive more regular traffic than the following internet giants combined: Netflix, Amazon, and X, also known as Twitter. If you put all the income from Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter together, it does not even come close to what the porn industry generates. So it clearly is a pandemic. So maybe coming to Murugi, what inspired you to do the work that you do?
So I do the work I do because I struggled with porn addiction myself. I was addicted to almost everything you can imagine: porn, weed, masturbation, and all of it was coming from a point of brokenness. When you are listing and saying we have high schoolers and all the children are using these drugs, I found myself asking myself, why are they doing it? Is it because of peer pressure, or is it because they're going through underlying problems and they need a way to cope? You see, weed makes you happy. Do not be fooled. Weed actually makes you happy. Porn and masturbation, the reason why they're so addictive is because they produce dopamine. At least they trigger the production of dopamine. That makes you happy. If nothing else in this world is making you happy, you have 3 things that are guaranteed to make you happy. Unfortunately, these 3 things are, because they're from the enemy, they are sucking you in, and the end is going to be distraction. But you don't know that. all you want is a release. So I was getting a lot of release from porn, weed, and masturbation. But by the grace of God, when I had gotten addicted and nothing else could help, and even the dopamine was not dopamining anymore, the Lord came in like a lion. He swooped me up. He saved me. And then I was called. Now I made a video on TikTok. My generation is entirely on TikTok. I made a video on TikTok. It went viral, and that's how the Lord thrust me into the world of helping people overcome all these addictions. And so far, I think I have a group of around 2,000 people who are overcoming the same things. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Amazing. And I'll come towards you telling us about how we can find you online. Let me come to Susan. Susan, are parents helpless against this influence? I told you, I think I said there was a blind spot right there. How can parents help their children? Because we've seen even from the presentation by Mount Moriah, that they're calling on parents to be involved. But parents may feel like we are powerless against these monsters in the family. What would you say to parents?
Even before I say that, all this that we are talking about are addictive behaviors. They affect the same part of the brain, and that is the pleasure center. So that means that, again, you don't end up with just one. Yeah? So you will find that where gambling is done, for example, and betting, you will find that is where sports is involved, and then alcohol is also combined. So you end up with multiple addictions without actually knowing it. So now to the parents, all is not lost, but you've got to become present. And when I say present, it's not the same as presentism, because that is what most of us do. If they count those you are in, you are there. But in terms of engaging with the children, no. So one of the things that you can do is, even if you had 7 children, you need to provide quality time. And that is like 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes for each child. So even if you had 10, you just have like a little over 1 hour to deal with every child. And that quality time is not where you are the one doing the talking. And the conversation is not about academics, because that is all that we ever talk about. So it means that at home, you need to provide structure. That is why schools do better than home, because anything goes at home. And so as a parent, you must demonstrate what you want to see, not what you don't want to see, because as parents we'll say, don't drink. So why are you drinking? Because I'm an adult. So when I grow up, I would like to be like my dad. So that means it's a monkey see, monkey do. So one, demonstrate what you need to see done. And that means you are providing structure.
Wow. So find out from the person sitting next to you, are you a hypocrite? Are you a hypocrite? Because it seems as if you can't teach what you don't practice. And let me come to Sharon. Pornography is ubiquitous. As long as you've got devices, iPads, phones, screens, apparently I may be saying, oh my goodness, you're saying this thing does not discriminate on race, does not discriminate on gender, it does not discriminate on whatever region of the world you're in. So perhaps maybe we should ban all technology and just live like, I think in America, you've got this group of people called the Amish, right? Who try and as much as possible, or maybe you go to some really remote places like in Kenya, where maybe you find some tribes that do not interact a lot with technology. Maybe are those the safest people on earth, or is that the safe approach? Should we start going back to the Stone Age?
Well, that's impossible, for one thing, because they'll get it somewhere. They'll get it in the schools, in the stores, when they walk in the streets. There's technology everywhere. And so we cannot ignore that our children are seeing some forms of porn, whether they walk down the street. We have stories of children who just the lingerie ads that came with the newspaper started their porn addiction. Okay, we have some of the romance novels that start to get a little steamy that have led people to porn addictions. Just sometimes browsing when something pops up and you click on it. So instead of banning technology, what we need to do is immunize our families by talking about it. Because we need to talk about what they do when they see porn. I have a list of, I pulled this up because I don't know if we can pull it up on the screen, because I had several slides, but one is pornography interview questions that you can be asking your family, even your spouse, on a regular basis. Well, I guess we'll start with family computer rules that's up on the screen. There should be very strict computer rules for children especially. All the phones, all the devices should be off after a certain time. The phones could even be put in the parents' rooms. Laptops should never be used except in a public place where people passing by can see what's on the screen. Anyways, these are just some suggested rules that you can find at pornpandemic.org. There's some tabs across the top. But there's also interview questions like, what do you consider to be pornography? You know, help people define it. Anything that causes arousal or sexual feelings in your body. Are you aware that pornography viewing is a common problem among youth and young people, and it can become addictive? Talk to your children. Do you know that a pornography addiction can make you want to watch it again and again and again, even if you don't want to? And you can come to me. I'm a safe place for you to come if this happens, because your brain can be hijacked no matter how good of a person you are. And if you see some signs that there might be pornography addiction happening, you know, we just had a case of a wife that came to me and she was ready to divorce her husband, and she kept saying, you know, he has no empathy for me, he won't pay attention, he's not helping with the kids, I can't live like this, I need support, I need love, I need a partner. Slowly, his brain had been hijacked. And I said, it sounds like he's watching porn. Oh, no. I know he's not. He's told me he's not watching porn. One time I caught it, and he says he's only done it a few times. And I said, did he ever get any interventions? And she said, no. And I sent her some articles from some other women who had husbands with porn addictions, and it listed all the ways that they were treated negatively by their spouse, because porn objectifies women, and you will see these symptoms in a marriage. So if you have any questions, you really need to dig deeper, because porn causes people to lie. They will lie about it. They'll lie to themselves about how serious it is. They'll say, oh, well, I haven't watched it for 2 weeks, so I'm fine. I've overcome this. When you discover porn, what happens sometimes is a marriage or a mom finds a child with porn, they're like, oh no, and they tell them how terrible this is and how addictive it is and how, you know, they've got to stop because, you know, all the people in jail that have sexual crimes, most of them say they viewed porn, and, you know, and this creates a lot of trauma in the head of a child. And it actually can cause the addiction to cement itself, because the child will say, oh, I'm a terrible person, I've watched this, I'll never watch it again. But nobody's helped solve the problem in the brain that's happening that's addicted them to that. And so they white knuckle it and they stay away from it. And then the next time they dive even deeper into it, so, and more secretive. So it's really, really important to talk to your children, talk to your spouse about it regularly, watch for signs. And if you do find it, approach it in the most non-attacking, non-traumatic way as you can, and just help them get help.
Yes. Wow, I like that you said in a non-attacking, because the example that she gave of the parent, and I kept thinking, that's an American parent. Oh no, stop watching porn, it's wrong, you know, it's gonna ruin your life. You know, I'm thinking about an African parent. You will move out of this house. You know, even the way, American pastors, this is sin, this is hurting God. African pastors, your destiny is on the line. You gotta love Africa, but you're talking about being sensitive, and that's it, because you don't want to ruin you don't want to lose the relationship with the child. You want to help them. So maybe to come to Murugi, maybe someone here is saying, all right, how do I help my kid? And I myself am addicted. And I believe when Sharon said porn causes you to lie, I believe it's all addictions. Even with drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, you find yourself lying, you know. You're hiding that alcohol bottle, you're hiding that weed, you're hiding whatever it is, and you're lying. Perhaps someone is saying, how can I help my kid and I'm addicted? What do I do? How do I get out of it myself?
So, first, it is to admit you're addicted yourself, okay? And that is the first step. The Bible says in John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend. Once you yourself, and it is impossible to not know that you're addicted to porn, because you find that, like she said, you start looking up crazy things. Porn is demonic because the enemy literally degrades you. He degrades your mind and basically gives you an impulse to watch other people be degraded. You find that the quality and the type of porn you're watching is the hardest, weirdest, craziest stuff, you see. If you've gotten there, my dear, you're addicted, and it's okay, you see. So first is to accept and admit. Second is to first know that you're not far gone. The Lord, his hand is not too short. There is no one the Lord cannot save, okay? Third, I hope you're plugged into a church, because you will need to find someone to talk to. If it is an accountability partner, if it is someone who, maybe your pastor in your church. Unfortunately, we have pastors who are addicted. So you go to your pastor and you're like, I'm addicted. And you're like, oh yeah, me too, high five, you know? So finding someone to help you, thankfully, there are so many groups that have come up. Anas is doing an incredible job. He even has a book for that. Yeah. So, you know, hit him up. And the beauty about accountability is, I have found even in my group, anyone who opens up about it, their chances of recovering increases incredibly. Just you saying, by the way, Anas, Aki, I'm struggling. The Bible, just like I said, John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot comprehend. By you admitting it, the devil loses part of his hold on you. Now you just have to do the recovery of the mind, you see. So find someone to talk to, and maybe I can give you a few of the tips that the Lord, because it is the Lord only who helps me overcome all these addictions at the same time. And he helps me do 3 things. First, I was doing daily Bible study, daily journaling, and daily prayer. Those 3 things, first and foremost, in the morning. And I was coming from a culture where I was queer, I was a lesbian, I was a stud, I was a party animal, and then the Lord called me in the most miraculous way, and then all of a sudden I'm coming from the club at 3 a.m. to praying at 3 a.m. That is a transition that only the Lord can do, you see. So in those moments, the Lord gave me a grace to pray. I pray that that is going to be the same thing for you. And not just praying like, God, take this addiction away. No, pray to know him more. Matthew 6:33 says, seek ye first the kingdom, you know it, and his righteousness, and everything, okay? So that is going to happen. The other 2 things you can do is movement and project immersion. Project immersion is find something that is going to give you the same level of dopamine. It might not meet the porns and, you know, all those dopamine combined, but it is going to build up the happy hormone engines within you. You see, if it is a sport you wanted to do, if it is a project, if you wanted to learn how to crochet, to play the guitar, find something that is going to take your attention, going to busy your mind, to build new mental links, okay? And moving your body around.
Amazing. And to come to Susan, parents come from the place of shock. First of all, oi, unavuta bangi, you know? I can't believe it. You know, there are demons in my house. You know, we get shocked. I don't know if you've seen that famous interview by that Ugandans in the house. Where are the Ugandans? Our Ugandan brothers. You know, you gave us a journalist called, is it Simon Kagwa, who was interviewing a gay rights activist. And, you know, he was so shocked. The first question he asked him, why are you gay? So, you know, parents can move from that shock stage. But then with time, you get desensitized. And you can get to a point where even if you're trying to help someone, you get compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue happens when you help and help and help and you are tired. Perhaps the people here were saying, I've got a member of the family and I am overwhelmed. I've got compassion fatigue. I'm doing all the right things. What do I do, Susan?
All right. First, just because a child has tasted a drug does not mean they are addicted. Because that is one challenge that we have. Parents, as you're saying, the first shock, the next thing they are thinking, this child is addicted, now let me take him to a rehab. Shock on you, there is no rehab for children in Kenya. So please don't take a child to any rehab. You're going to make the situation worse. But if you are in Nairobi, the Kenyatta National Hospital has a youth center, and therefore they'll be able to assess and therefore deal with the issues. And for your information, drug use is a coping strategy for an underlying issue. And also note that mental health disorders and substance use disorders most often kick in at adolescence. So you don't know whether it is the adolescent stage, it is the drug use, or it is a mental disorder. And so that is why the first thing that you need to do is to ensure that there is an assessment. Help is available. NACADA has a toll-free line, 1192, that works 24 hours. So that could be the first place that you can call, so that then you don't start by rushing into a rehab. If a rehab accepts, more often than not, it's because of the money. And that is why sometimes you find somebody went in with alcohol issue, they come out with a cannabis issue. Yeah. So please, parents, call NACADA, 1192. Speak to somebody who understands the issues of addiction, because addiction is also a family disease. Yes, so one person may be affected, but the whole family ends up getting sick as a result of it.
Wow. 1192. Write the number down and hope you never call it, right? Yeah. But have it, because you just may need to call it. Yeah, I'm seeing my wife. She should write it down as well. Though we hope not to call it. But you have to be prepared in the eventuality, right? America, okay? People look at America and go like, wow, I think for a very long time, America was the home of the free and the brave, huh? And everybody wanted to go to America. What can we learn from the mistakes America has made? Kenya is, you would say, halfway between here and where America is. And what would you say to us so that we choose well and we make wiser decisions and learn from the wisdom that you have?
Thank you for that question. And I'm wondering if the tech people could pull up slide 28, because in America, we've learned to approach this at different issues. There's many NGOs that have arisen and businesses to help parents with this. If you find the one that says free tools to protect children, these are ones you can find online as well. One is called Kids-in-Mind. You can go there. This one unfortunately costs. Most of the rest of these are free, but you can get one level of this for free. It rates all the new movies and shows you which ones are going to be problematic. So before I would allow my child to go to the theater, I would look up the movie here and see whether it was appropriate, instead of them being shocked and seeing things they shouldn't. FightTheNewDrug.org, that's free. They have sign up for their emails. They approach youth in a very focused way, and it's a really great one if you have a youth that's struggling to even have them be a part of that. ProtectYoungMinds.com, my friend Kristen Jensen, she created that. Sign up for their newsletter. They give you all sorts of tips to help protect your children from pornography. And might I say, one of the things I learned from them is that you help your children, tell them, when you see porn, what do you do? Well, they teach them to close the laptop, turn off the computer, teach them how to do that fast, because they can be locked into it. And then come tell mom, no matter how old they are. So talking about it can help them process it so it doesn't turn into an addiction, because they will see it. There is no way your child is not going to be exposed to porn. So the important thing is to teach them what to do and how to deal with it. K9webprotection.com. I tried that now, and I think you have to do some Google searches, but they had a wonderful program that I saw you can download, and it puts restrictions on the computer or on the phone, meaning they can only watch something at certain times. You can lock it down according to hour, and there's all sorts of filtering issues you can use. And vidangel.com is one of my favorite websites. I think it's like a $10 subscription, though, a month, but it actually filters movies when you watch them. And you can decide what level of swear words you want to hear or not hear, what level of, sexual content. So being a wise consumer of media and television and Netflix and all of these things, even Netflix has really good parental controls. Even Apple phones have good parental controls. But no parental control, no filter is going to stop a child who develops an addiction, because they can always learn to get around it. So always check in with your children. And the last thing, could I say one more thing quickly? If you can also skip to slide, when you said what can we learn that we've done too late, slide 22, my state of Utah passed a historic resolution against pornography. And we did this too late, but now we're starting to create laws to protect children from sexual exploitation. If you go to slide 24, it says, there is a Kenya national resolution to combat porn that you all could champion and get passed here. Go to slide 25. It starts like this. Whereas pornography represents the photographic or video depictions of sexual exploitation of a human being, whereas the production of hardcore pornography entails the exploitation and degradation of women and girls, and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas consumption of pornography is a root cause of violence against women. At any rate, this resolution would declare pornography viewing an addiction as a public health concern and a serious crisis for families. And then it has solutions and ideas for how to protect in policy, and then in the schools, and then in the home, your children and your families against pornography. I think it would be an amazing outcome of this whole conference if this resolution was put forward in your parliament and you became one of the first countries in Africa to have a resolution with this focus to protect your families.
Wow, wouldn't that be wonderful? And I think we need to, because just before the pandemic, there was one of the leading porn sites in the world released data on porn consumption around the world, and then they distributed, because they look at your IP address and they can tell if you're a man or you're a woman, and they were looking at porn consumption according to gender. And what they did is that they noticed throughout the world, at least by that time, for every one man that consumed pornography, for every one woman that consumed pornography, there were 4 men. So the ratio is 1:4. Women also consume pornography. But there were certain countries where the ratio was about 1:3 at that time, just before the pandemic. And they realized that in these particular nations, there were more women than men consumed. There were more women than other countries consuming pornography. There were still more men in those countries, but the number of women was rising pretty much. And they did a top 10 list of countries where women are leading in consuming pornography, and globally, Kenya was number 3 on the list. So porn is not just a male problem, it's also a women's problem. And guys, it's breeding pedophilia, it's breeding rapists in the home, it's breeding a lot of chaos in the home. And you may say, I don't think I would ever become that. Well, you don't know. The end game could be that, all right? So perhaps we need to do this. I won't make another promise on behalf of KCPF. We'll just act, all right? All right, parting shot very quickly, and then we go for our lunch. Let me start with Murugi, and then Susan.
I'm actually surprised you've not made your porn again joke.
Oh, no, not today.
Okay. So my parting shot is there's freedom in Christ. It will never run out. As long as the blood still works, it will never run out. As long as you're alive, there's a chance for freedom for you and your child, right? If you need resources, Ernest Wamboy has incredible resources right there at the back. I am writing, actually have written a workbook that is going to help people overcome porn addicts, overcome porn, and weed addicts overcome weed. It takes them through the first 8 weeks because the first 21 days are the hardest for any addiction. That is when most people fall. In fact, the first week of quitting porn, you feel like you're going mad. But now, based on that experience, based on my experience in science, I've been able to come up with a workbook that walks with you step by step through the first 8 weeks of quitting porn and weed. If that is a resource you might want, you might consider reaching out to me. And to say that, again, freedom is possible. The enemy might make you feel like all is lost, your brain is lost, you look at a woman and all you see is nyash. Sorry for using that word. But there is freedom. Thank you.
The older generation is like, what's that?
It's a butterfly. Sorry.
Don't try that at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I would like to say addiction is a family disease. Substance use addiction is a family disease. But help is available. And therefore, do not suffer because, like all addictions, there is always the aspect of shame for our family and anybody else. So as NACADA, we have a lot of materials. If you can get to our website, nacada.go.ke, we have materials for children of various ages and for parents, because many times when we reach out to people, they ask, how do I talk to my children about substance use, and particularly prevention? So there is a booklet there for parents, and these conversations should start from as early as when the child can talk, because that is when they already have messages, and some of the formation with regard to substance use begins as early as that. And so we also have trainings that targets families, because there is so much to be said about this. And if you get to our website again, you will be able to get that information. And during lunch break, you can also have a conversation if you would want us to reach out to you. Because right now, we have opened county offices. So as much as possible, we want to get to the ground. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for our panelists. Let's give it up for our panelists.